Hello, welcome to this very special edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting from the famous Blue Note here in New York City. Blessing the band stage for 2 weeks here at the Blue Note is jazz composer and guitarist Bill Frisell. Now, he has a dynamic project that he's just released on the OK Sony imprint entitled When You Wish Upon a Star. And what he's doing with this project is he's paying homage to some of the great television theme songs as well as movie theme songs which he grew up seeing in the 60s. And he really dives into a cadre of different types of theme songs, ranging from the theme from Bonanza to Johnny Mandel's The Shadow of Your Smile, as well as Henry Mancini's Moon River, just to name a few. I had a chance to sit down with him briefly to talk about this album. We talked about this 2-week residency here. He's also playing music off his previous recording, which was Jazz in the Space Age, in which he does another tribute to a lot of the rock-oriented songs that he grew up listening to during the 60s and also early 70s. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the highlights of Mr. Bill Frisell's residency here at the Blue Note as part of the Pace Report here in New York City. You know, this recording is like all of your projects. There's a theme, and this one's very interesting because you go back to a lot of the music that you grew up listening to, watching television, and going to the movies.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's some autobiographical thing going on there. Or as I'm getting older, I look back and I learned so much from the stuff that something that affected me so strongly back then, and in music that I things that are they're in my ear, in my blood, really, but I never really played them. Like, I mean, I've done this John Lennon thing or guitar in the space age. I mean, I'm sort of looking at a lot of things that I heard growing up, and actually, some people say it's nostalgia. I'm not sure what it is exactly. I'm trying to, I'm like actually be able to play this stuff on my instrument. It's a different, takes it to another place than just having it floating around in the back of my mind. So I don't know. It brings it more. Makes it more real and more, and then it strengthens for me, the foundation of where I come from. It just grounds it more, and then it shows me where, my hope is that I love to look at things, something that happened a while ago, like Louis Armstrong, and try to imagine what was that like. What if you walked into a club and you heard him playing back then, and you never heard that before, and it's like, oh my God, what would that, it's something so everybody can relate to it, and it's beautiful, but you've never heard it ever before in your life. You know, that moment of hearing something that's brand new. It's like I'm always trying to figure out what was it that, you know, a lot of these film scores that I've done, it's like there was a lot of experimenting and chances being taken and people sort of going out on a limb with things, and so I'm just checking it out.
You know, Bill, you really go all over the music gamut on it. You do the theme of The Godfather, you do Bonanza, and as I recall, now my father is a big Western. I guess you guys grew up on that. That was the genre, the crime detective in the Western. But as I can recall vividly, the music to Bonanza is quite complicated. The music is kind of country Western, but there's also some orchestral.
No, I mean, there's so much in this stuff. Things, you know, that happens a lot. Something you take for granted. You hear it so much, maybe. I got this compilation of, it just has, I don't know how many, like, television themes from the 50s and 60s. Like, things they're just sort of, I've heard them my whole life, but I started listening to that thing just as, again, trying to clear my mind and like just listen to it as music. Like I imagine that I never heard it, and it's like, whoa, there's some insane stuff on there. I mean, in every what harmony, rhythm, melody, orchestration, and the level of the playing on some of those things. You know, you think of these guys, how a lot of those television guy probably walked in the studio and, okay, here's the thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, bam, and then the whole world is hearing that. You know, what was a couple hours of this guy's life.
Right.
He just went in, knocked it out, went on to do something else, and then it becomes this, I don't know what the word for that, you know, it's, the rest of us are, you know, it's becomes part of our imagination.
You know, if you look back in the 50s and 60s, there was an exorbitant amount of arrangers and conductors who were, you know, creating theme songs. Look at Henry Mancini, Neil Hefti. Who's the guy that did Mission Impossible?
Lalo Schifrin.
Their music.
I mean, it's mind blowing, the level of the composers, arrangers, and the guy, there's so many uncredited musicians. I'm sorry, but you know, badass.
Yeah.
You know, like amazing musicians playing that stuff. That, you know, sometimes you can find their names somewhere, but not so much, really.
One of the songs that I love on this album happens to be from one of my favorite James Bond movies. And You Only Live Twice was done by the great John Barry. And it was sung by Nancy Sinatra originally. But you have Petra Hayden singing the vocals on this.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Petra I've known, I can't remember when I first met. It's quite a history now. You know, we made a duet record some years ago. I actually met her through Paul Motion, the drummer who I played with for many years, and Charlie Hayden, her father, and so I met her long time ago, and we started to play music together, and yeah, she's incredible.
Why'd you choose that song?
It was one of those yeah, like every song on this album has I have some kind of a personal connection. Yeah, I mean, some are maybe deeper or more serious. This is more like when I was barely could just got my driver's license. I mean, there's all these memories surrounding these things, and those James Bond movies were coming out right when I was at the end of junior high school, beginning of high school, and like I remember having a sort of a so-called date with a girl, and I'm driving my parents' car and just haven't gotten my license and going to see, I think it was maybe From Russia with Love or something, was one of the first ones that I saw. But just those James Bond, the Sean Connery ones especially, they just resonate with, and the sound. So again, that the music has so much to do with creating the atmosphere, and so then it was, I don't know, in the last few years I watched that movie again, and it was like
Blofeld was a crazy villain in that movie.
no, and just that song kind of jumped out like, wow, this is a beautiful. And there's a whole bunch of versions of that song. Then there's a Bjork version that's amazing, and again, John Barry. There's like, started checking out his stuff, and there's like,
his orchestral arrangements were insane.
Yeah, the use of the low kind of brass sounds or with the guitar, and then, but some of the harmonies also are like, wait a minute, it's like, if you start looking careful, I mean, that's true with so many things. You look just a little bit deeper, and there's some stuff in there, really.
And we forgot to also add about that soundtrack and that score that took place in Japan. So there was some world elements of Japanese Asian music in John Barry's score.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I wasn't even really thinking about that, but yeah. But it's if you combine all those things, I combine my own memories of that time, and then it's just sort of rediscovering how rich that music is. It just as music, just on a musical level, not even associating with the film, or it's just, there's a lot to draw from.
important, if not iconic, theme songs on this When You Wish Upon a Star project. You do Johnny Mandel's Shadow of a Smile, and then you also do Henry Mancini's Moon River. Both of these songs have pretty much held its weight over the last 50 or 60 years.
Oh yeah. Those are, I've played both those songs. I've played over and over and over, and I never get tired of them. I actually got earlier I was talking about some of these unsung, they call them studio musicians or what, people, uncredited musicians. I got recently had the chance to meet. I went to L.A. and it's a long story how I got in this position, but I got to have a sort of a lunch date with a bunch of these guys, and one of them was Bob Bain, guitar player, who, see, you probably don't know his name, but he was the guy that played Moon River with Audrey Hepburn in the movie. He was the guy that was playing the guitar while she was, and like the thought, wait a minute, that's the guy. The very first time that song was ever played, that I met that guy, and he described this situation like, he goes to the studio and there's Audrey Hepburn, and well, let's go try to learn this song, like Henry Mancini's. Well, here's this song. Just think, wow, that was, what I mean? That blows my mind to think the first time that song was ever played, and he was the one that played it. So, and he also he played the Bonanza theme, which, not many people know who those guys were, so. But yeah, that song, it just keeps coming back to me. And Shadow of Your Smile, I remember when I grew up in Denver, and toward the end of high school, I met who became such an important teacher for me, guitarist Dale Bruning, who's still there playing like crazy. And that was one of the first songs he taught me, was Shadow of Your Smile, and for years and years, and then I would hear so many different versions of that song, different people. I didn't even really, I hadn't seen the movie, The Sandpipers, where it comes from. But again, years and years and years, like, it's like a jazz standard. Everybody plays it different ways, bossa nova or this or that, and fast or slow. And it was sort of an abstract, it was a whatever. I didn't know where it came from, but then eventually I finally saw the film, and it was, again, it struck me, hit me in a different way. That if folks haven't seen that movie, The Sandpiper, the whole opening sequence of the film, it's Elizabeth Taylor and Richard, I think that's where they kind of hooked up, was on that film. And it takes place in Big Sur, California, where it's another, for me, a connection where I spent some time in Big Sur, and I really have fallen in love with that. It's just extraordinary, beautiful part of the country. But the whole opening credits it's just a flyover of, you're flying over the ocean in Big Sur, and that song is playing, but with, oh man, is it Jack Sheldon is playing, I think Jack Sheldon, I hope, is playing trumpet, just playing the melody on a trumpet with this beautiful orchestration, and that was another moment, hearing that song, where it took it to this other level for me, or another place that I'd never. So that's what drew me to want to play that.
Yeah. Just for the police,
to shift gears a bit. Guitar in the Space Age is a project I thought was very courageous of you, because you said earlier that you really were affected by the guitar in the 60s, and rock and roll was really moving in another direction from rhythm and blues to rock and roll. And the guitar did kind of shape the 60s, as far as if you were in a band, you had to have at least two guitarists and one bassist, or vice versa. Tell me about your psyche and you understanding and wanting to get to understand the guitar. And tell me some of the artists and some of the music that you listened to that kind of opened up Pandora's box for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I've said this before, but it's, again, it goes maybe back to the television again, is when, when my family first got a TV when I was 4 or 5 years old, early 50s, and my dad brought home this big cardboard box, and we was like, wow, this is, and I started watching TV, and there'd be cowboys and playing guitar, and like, wow, that's cool. And then there was the Mickey Mouse Club, and the guy on Jimmy on the Mickey Mouse Club,
Yes,
he would play this guitar. And so I was like 4 years old when I just thought it was a cool thing. So I took a piece of cardboard and cut it out like a guitar and put rubber bands on it. And so, way back, I was fascinated with just the object of the thing. But then, fast forward 10 more years, and it was just such a part of, there was this thing in the atmosphere, we're sending rocket ships up into space, and there's hot rods, and I'm talking about when I'm like 10, 11, 12 years old, and the things that were firing up my imagination, the guitar, all these electric guitars and stuff were all, surfing. I was living in Colorado, about as far as you could get from the ocean, but everybody's talking about surfing, and there's all those bands, the Ventures and the Surfaris and the
Dick Dale.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the Beach Boys and all that stuff. So there was this thing, then the music and just the object, the thing itself was like, looked cool. I just wanted to have one. So, and then the Beatles, that was the kind of the final, okay, this is it. This is what I gotta, I was how old was I? February of 1964, so I wasn't quite 13 yet. Wow. Is that right? I can't even count. But anyway, seeing them, that was like, bam, everything just it was another world from the day before to the day after. Everybody wanted to have a guitar. So it's not like I was just sort of following along with what everybody was, and through them, it's just the way music is, the connections are so, you don't have to, there's nothing to figure out. You just, if you like it, okay, I like the Beatles, so then, oh wow, what's that they're doing? That's Chuck Berry. You start figuring out where they're getting their stuff from, whether Chuck Berry or Buck Owens or there's, then the Rolling Stones came right close by, then there's Muddy Waters, and you just start following all these threads, and that's all I've been doing since,
Because, Bill, I wanted to bring that up. I mean, in the 50s, there were these great guitar records. And when I say guitar records, the genres were all over the place. I mean, look at Santo and Johnny and Sleepwalk. And then you had clearly across the tracks you had Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry doing their thing, and then across the street you had a man by Les Paul who really kind of was like the archbishop of how when we do multi-tracking, and then also how he played the guitar. I mean, the guitar really kind of was in its infancy stages when it was really trying to evolve in all genres of music in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, there's a thing with electricity that definitely bumped it up into. I was thinking with Charlie Christian or something. Then it suddenly, it just kind of went haywire with the possibilities of how it could fit into so many different circumstances. So.
What was your take on the blues, the British guitarists like Eric Clapton and Jeff Beck and Paul? What was your take going into like the 70s, late 60s when loud rock was going in a whole nother direction?
I mean, that was the other thing that happened when I was in high school. Everything happened so fast. When I think of the years, hearing the Beatles and the Rolling Stones in like 64, and then pretty quickly I wanted to find out what blues was. And then I remember getting this, you almost said it, Paul Butterfield. That was like, wow, that just was like, freaked me out. But then through that, someone said, well, if you like that, you should check it. And then you look at some of the guys that was playing with Paul, but Sam Lay and some of the guys in his band and Chicago and that. Then there was a record called, there was a compilation record that it was Chicago, the Blues Today, and it had Junior Wells and Otis Spann, and it had a bunch of J.B. Hutto, all these. So it's, but I'm talking about things were just happening within months or some, and it was happening in a, now we have our phones or whatever, you punch in something and all the information comes up. But back then it was also, I would go to there was a place called the Denver Folklore Center in Denver, and I'd kind of go down, it was like a record store and a guitar shop, and then they would have people playing and just people kind of hanging out on the street. And I would, I was pretty young, and I'd go there and just sort of like, I'd look at the records and I'm kind of listening to what people were saying. And that's where I found that Paul Butterfield record. And I remember overhearing someone else saying, well, man, they were talking, yeah, Paul Butterfield, he's hip, but if you got to check out this other thing, just this sort of, you found out things in a different way too. I would just sort of kept my ears open and.
Generally, I have to ask the jazz masters like yourself.
No matter.
Yes, you are. You're mastering the music, and at your particular phase of your career right now, Bill, what is it that you want the next generation of musicians, as well as guitarists who are learning this music, to understand fundamentally, one, about the history of this music, but also, two, about the concepts of how to play the guitar?
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get discouraged with the state of things in the world, or even with the amount of, if you start getting into music and it becomes overwhelming, like there's so much available and so much to do, but it just gets for me, it just gets down to this very simple, if you somebody asked me, what do you do next, or this, or what do you, the music always tells you what to do. There's never, if you love it and you just stay true to, I think everybody knows what they love. You just try to stick with that, and it's always told me what the next step should be. I mean, there's never a question. You play one note, and immediately it's gonna suggest something else. You play one chord, and it suggests something. Learn one song, and it'll suggest, and it just, it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and you just stay in it. And if you stay where you're in love with it, nothing can go wrong. So that's all. I don't know. For young folk, I don't think there's not that much to really know, other than just stay true to what you love. That's it.
That'll do it again for this very special edition of the Pace Report. I'm Brian Pace, reporting from the Blue Note here in New York City. I'd like to personally thank the talented Bill Frisell, and I want to congratulate him on his 2 weeks here for his residency. Please support him for his latest project, When You Wish Upon a Star, which is on the OK Sony Records imprint. I'd like to personally thank the staff and management here at the Blue Note for their warm hospitality and support. As always, please visit my website, www.thepacereport.com, for my weekly column, as well as my past segments. Until next time, remember, if it's in the groove, it'll make you move. Till next time, peace.